Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone. And now, here's your host and CEO of Rue Global Impact, Deborah Rue.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. And I want to tell you, I'm nervous and excited and honored about this episode. I believe this is probably going to be one of my most important episodes that we've ever done. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of them. So today I have 6 guests, and we have 2 amazing women that are sign language interpreters. We have Jenny and we have Gussie signing for us, and we're very, very grateful and thankful for them. And so also we have 6 guests, and we're going to talk about Asian Americans today. And we're going to also talk about the bullying of Asian Americans in the United States, which it makes my heart hurt that we are doing that to our fellow Americans, especially our fellow Americans with disabilities. Not that they should be treated differently, but they're already disenfranchised often. And, so I think it's a very important topic, but you don't need to hear it from me. I'm not an Asian American. You need to hear it from these leaders. And we have a wide range of leaders all joining us from California. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick introduction of everybody. So I'm going to start with somebody that you might recognize, Soing Van, who has actually been on the program before. She is an attorney with the Disability Rights of California. And this is also part of the reason why we're having this conversation, because they worked together, this team worked together and created a video that is amazing. It's called Invisible No More. Excuse me, I am going to read from notes because I got a lot of information. Invisible No More, Voices of Intersectional Asian Americans and Pacific Islander, or AAPI, communities. And you can find the video, and we will be providing the link to this really amazing video that they did. I highly, highly recommend that you watch it. Very talented individuals. So I'm going to start with our guests. So first of all, I mentioned we have Soing Van, who is a special counselor for strategic partnerships and community engagement at Disability Rights California, where she works in partnership with the executive director to manage strategies for engagement to support community goals. I just realized I should slow down so I don't, rush the interpreters, excuse me, and represent disability rights in California and strategic partnerships with disability leaders and organizations, disability community members, civil rights leaders and organizations. And once again, she was on another episode, and we will also provide the link to that. She has an amazing voice, and she's become a dear friend too. So I'm just really, really so happy that I got to be friends with her and now all these other amazing people. So next, we have Kavita Pipalia, which I'm sure I said that incorrectly. I apologize, Kavita. She is a Global Deaf Aid Foundation Executive Director. She is also an entrepreneur. She's a native of India and is an active professional in a variety of deaf serving organizations. The current president of California Association of the Deaf, one of 3 deaf mothers who are founders of Coda West, a nonprofit organization which provides hearing children with deaf parents programs and camp program opportunities so they can interact with peers. She works in sales for Sprint Relay while simultaneously teaching American Sign Language at Pasadena City College in Los Angeles, California. Outside of her professional life, she participates in advocacy and consulting services for various companies to provide accommodation needs for deaf people. For example, she's currently mentoring an Indian hearing woman who has a deaf daughter, and she's now an IPP, interpreting professional, program to become an interpreter, which she was really thrilled about because as an Indian woman herself, she wants to see other Indian women in the profession. So we applaud what she's doing. And once again, she's an entrepreneur, and she's going to talk a little bit about what she's doing there too. So thank you. We have Raymond Kwong. who is an advocate with the Disability Rights California and with the Advocacy and Community Engagement, or ACE team. He has been with DRC for 5 years and recently joined the Legal Clinic project, where he works with attorneys and advocates to provide training and legal clinics in the disability community. Raymond is also involved with the Asian and Pacific Islanders with Disability of California, a nonprofit that trains young adults to become advocates and connect families to resources. And I want to say that he's been a technology whiz for us as we've been pulling this all together. So thank you, Raymond, for that too. Next, we have Sharon N., who is counseling and psychology master's degree. Bravo, Sharon. She has cerebral palsy. She's also proud to be a mother of an amazing daughter. Her family migrated from Vietnam, and she did make an important note in her bio. The Asian and Vietnamese cultural views on disability are that individuals should be hidden from society. They are a burden to the family. They believe reincarnation happened as you were a horse thief or something in another life. And so disability is a punishment due to your past life, which I'm sorry is ridiculous. And Sharon is just breaking down every single barrier she runs into. So just get out of her way. So I love what she's doing. She has a bachelor's degree in child development and family studies and a master's degree in counseling psychology and over 15 years of professional experience in the disability community. Her work history has included working with both nonprofit agencies and for-profit businesses and providing services to the local communities in Southern California. She's an adjunct instructor and professor expert at DSS North Orange Continuing Education. She served as an educational consultant, counselor intern at the County Adult Mental Health and other behavioral clinics, and a director at a child care center. She was awarded, this was so cool, the Hearn Leadership Award, and was selected by Lane Chow from the U.S. Department of Labor to be on the Presidential Task Force for Youth with Disability and Employment. Wow. Sharon and Raymond are so young, but well, look what they've already done. And I love these other women making sure that these young people's voices are heard. I agree, Menching and Sharon. Wow. Next, we have Sharon Gao. She has a beautiful blue background behind her. She's a Japanese American who grew up in Los Angeles, California. She was working as an educational specialist for the deaf and hard of hearing at K-12 schools in Covina, California for the past 16 years. She's also one of the founders of the Southern California Asian Deaf Association, which was established in 1999. Her role in founding SCADA and her ongoing commitment to serving our deaf Asian community was inspired by their attendance at the first conference designed for deaf and hard of hearing Asian people and their families, entitled Access Silent Asia, held in San Francisco, California in 1994. In 1997, she was a co-chair of the second conference, Let's Break Down the Wall of Silence, hosted in Los Angeles, California. She's extremely proud that there are more Asian leaders within SCADA and believes that all deaf and hard of hearing people should have equal opportunities in education, jobs, and linguistics, and I agree with her. She also served as membership director of the California Association of the Deaf since 2017, and she believes that we should protect all deaf Californians' right to live equally, and by that way, all deaf people's rights to live equally, and for society to allow us to show what they can accomplish if we bother to let them. Sorry, I added that part, Sharon. And certainly, last but not least, Minqing Zhang immigrated from Taiwan to the United States when she was 3 years old. She's been an educator for high school students for 16 years and advocates for her students' right for education and encourages them to pursue all opportunities available to them in their future. Alongside teaching, she's involved in various extracurricular activities that the school provides, including the Academic Bowl and school clubs. She has served as president, treasurer, and member emeritus of the Southern California Asian Deaf Association since 2004. and is the South at-large director for the California Association for the Deaf since 2017. She is proud of her young students who are building their confidence, leadership skills, and identities. And we want to say we're proud of you for giving those young students a chance, because we have to be the leaders going forward. We have to make sure those of us with lived experiences with disabilities are celebrating them and opening the doors for everybody behind us. So, wow, what an impressive panel we have here. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to start with Soul Wing, and I'm going to ask the same question to everybody. Why can't we all celebrate? Why can't we all celebrate our lived experiences, individuals that are part of the Asian American community and part of the community of persons with disabilities? Soul Wing?
Yes, and I think the answer is absolutely yes, we should, right? Diversity is what makes us beautiful. Diversity is what makes us a more, society that's more livable, more enjoyable. So, what happens oftentimes is in society, especially in America, Asians are often left out of conversations. So if you're an Asian person with a disability, you're often doubly left out. So we're here, Deborah, and thank you so much. Thank you. We love you so much for this opportunity to share that we belong at the table, every table. And we have so many stories and so many rich experiences to share. So we're very glad for this opportunity.
Yes, well said. Kavita, you want to answer that question? And if you want, I can state it for you again for the interpreters. Why can't we all celebrate our lived experiences as individuals that are part of the Asian American community and also lived experiences as part of the disability community?
This is Kavita, and I do agree with what Soing had just said. I support what she said 100%. Oftentimes we are completely overlooked and dismissed by the community at large. I think the biggest challenge that we see is there's a lot of stigma with being disabled, especially including deaf and hard of hearing people, as I've mentioned. Oftentimes we are labeled first as a disabled person, especially for those who have visible disabilities. And once you get that label, it's really hard to break out of it. And as deaf and hard of hearing people, it's not a visible disability. So oftentimes we could be walking down the street and they look at us as if a regular person, so to speak, without a disability. However, we are. And, we could be driving, we could be walking down the street, and maybe there's a car behind us that's honking, or somebody speaking to me from behind telling me to get out of the way. There's been times I've been standing in the grocery store line and the person behind me is trying to say something to me, like, move up some or whatever, and I can't hear. And then that's when the indication is that I cannot hear. And then the interactions change, and then suddenly we become invisible. And this is where we need to fight. And we need to represent and say, no, we are part of the disability community. We are part of the community at large. And having a disability, and maybe deaf people aren't considered to be disabled, but in fact, we are. But the key is we're making things happen. We're standing up. We're asking for inclusivity for us and everybody in the disabled community.
Very well said, and very well said, because as you said, Kavita, I think one thing that our 1.3 billion community of people with disabilities can learn from the deaf community is the pride. It's like, no, don't decide I'm broken because I speak a different language. Stop. So I think we all can learn a lot by how proud the deaf community is. I've always been a little jealous of how that community has come together. And I know it's not perfect, but still. Raymond, do you want to talk about, answer that question?
Yes, absolutely. So I agree with both Sewing and Kavita. We should be able to celebrate both identities as a person with disability and as an Asian American. They're kind of going back to what Sharon and bio said. Even within the AAPI community, there's so much stigma on disability. It's that we have this disability because we past life have done something bad. There's so much shame, something that should be hidden away. I remember when I was younger, playing with my mom's friend. I remember her always say, "Don't tell them that you're blind, you're visually impaired." I never understood why. Well, now I do. And then in the American culture, you see this model minority myth for Asian American. We're supposed to be perfect, smart, successful, but we also, as a person with disability, we also need, extra help. And I think that's kind of sometimes blend together to me why not as many people, Asian American with disability, kind of speak up for themselves or ask for help because they want to live up to this perfect idea of model minority myth, but we need help and we just don't know how to go about it, and we don't want to be shamed or not appear to be successful to our family or to ourselves.
Oh, that was excellent. And you're right. The myth is that if you're Asian, you're smarter than everybody else. And that's a wonderful, at least we don't think Asians are dumb, but it puts a lot of pressure on people that are Asians too. So good. That's a great point. Thank you. Sharon N., tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, I think that given the last couple of years, people with disability has been far behind me socially. People don't bring us to the table. As an Asian American woman with a disability, we tend to be ignored more because we're supposed to be quiet and listen to other people tell you what to do. But when you break out of that form, it's gonna shock you to them. And like for me with the physical disability, sometimes maybe people are seeing me and they're scared that maybe it can happen to them. I'm not sure what their thought process is, but I mean, even as a parent with my child doesn't have a disability, we still get picked on and stuff like that. So it's important for all people with disability to bring forth as every other group. And you see, this month we're celebrating the ADA and disability pride, but the media doesn't really bring us to light. So I haven't seen anything in media compared to the other.
Well said, Sharon. I agree. I haven't seen. I mean, it always seems like we're talking to ourselves. But 1.3 billion minimum of us. I mean, we are a major part of society, which is why we have to stand up and say no. We're proud, in your case, to be Asian American, proud to be a mother, proud to be a woman with cerebral palsy, and society is who disables us. People with disabilities. I mean, it's society disables us. So I'll start getting off. But all right, Sharon G., how about you go next?
Since we created the Southern California Asian Association, every year we host a banquet. So we have deaf and hard of hearing people gather together. We share our cultures, our traditions, our values. And every year we invite one special guest to come and do a keynote. And they come from various countries, Korea, China, Malaysia, India, to come and share their experiences and educate us, to show our pride within our various cultures. And it's just a really nice feeling, and assuring all of us that we are not alone, and to walk away being proud of yourselves as an individual and share your narrative with the community at large.
Well said, well said. Minchin, why don't you tell us what you're thinking? And
in actuality, I agree with everybody. I think we do need to celebrate. We need to look back at our youth. I look at myself as remembering being very shy and hiding my Asian identity, because I didn't have a feeling that there was anybody else that I could talk to that would understand. I met Sharon G at CSUN, and that's where I got the inspiration and realized this is something to celebrate. This is who I am. This is where I can stand up in my identity. And it allowed me to be able to be that advocate for my students and to allow them to represent their cultural pride as well. I don't want to dismiss their identities. I don't want to squash their ability to celebrate who they are, whether they're a deaf person, a person with cerebral palsy, or a visual disability. We're all the same, we're human.
so agree, so agree. And that's why, well, actually my producer Doug came up with the name. That's why we named this show Human Potential at Work, because it's definitely a play on words. I have so many questions, and I realize there's no way we're going to get to them all. So what we're going to do, I want to go to Soul Wing next and have her talk about how y'all got together and you did the Invisible No More Voices video. And also, if any of y'all, after she speaks, wants to speak about that. And then I'm going to go through and I want to ask each of you a question. And I'm not going to do it with Soul Wing because I know that we have an entire episode with her, but and she also said, I don't want to talk too much. Let these amazing people talk. So, but just to prepare y'all, I'm going to ask you about, you know, for example, Kavita, we're going to talk about where you're going next with your entrepreneurship. How can we, things like that. So I just want to make sure that you each have time to talk about that. So we're going to start with So Wing, and let's talk about this video that you created with disability rights, and why and how it came together, because it's really, really beautiful work.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. First of all, I'm just getting all sorts of goosebumps just hearing everybody's response. So don't mind me if I get emotional. Just there's so much wisdom in this space that is just not tapped into. Yeah, so that very actually leads to the reason why we did the video that we did. We knew that there was a lot of hate against the Asian American communities. And oftentimes, if the media shows Asian at all, right, they're not showing deaf Asians, blind Asians, Asians with disabilities. And there's really no, I've seen any forum or any conversations, and Asians with disabilities are like everyone else, experiencing and potentially having a hard time because interactions with police, or, you know, the combination of immigration status and disability status and what society does with those status, not what we ourselves do, right? We're wholly who we are, but what society and how society responds. There's additional implications and dynamics. So we want to make sure we said, you know what, screw it. We're going to create our own space and add our own voice to the conversation. So I have Kavita to thank. She and I got together and we gathered some amazing folks that we want to have them share their stories. And that's what we have Invisible No More, Asians from the intersectional disability communities speaking out. So I really welcome everyone to see that video. It shares personal stories of the intersections of individuals, some of whom are here, and there are others in addition that are not here, to hear how that intersection works and how we can all celebrate all of our lives in that way.
Well said. Now I want to ask the panelists, does anybody want to comment on that, or shall we go to the next question? Anybody want to add more? Kavita, I don't know if you want to add more since you brought the team together.
The only thing I want to add to what Soing was saying is that we have to, you know, give a lot of great thanks to Sherry Farina. She is the one who connected Sewing and myself. She's the one who truly believes in us and was absolutely supportive of the Asian deaf community and disabilities. She's the one that brought Sewing and I together. And then from there, we brought in some of the folks you see right here with us today, and having the organization DRC. And I want to thank Sherry Farina, and don't overlook her part. And she's a director, executive director of the Northern California Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services.
I love women making a difference. Love it. And Raymond too, of course. Okay, so
Sharon, this is Sharon Goff.
go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I also wanted to share some gratitude to Sewing and Kavita for bringing me here today, because you know, that story that is in the video, I've never shared with anybody before in all of my lifetime. And that's the first time. And that was really painful and raw to share. And I just had no place to share it in the past. And having Sewing and Kavita, you know, bring me on this, it took me an hour of contemplation. Should I do this? Should I share this? Should I finally let this go? Because it's something that I never shared before, and I decided to go ahead. And I tell you, having shared that was a weight lifted off of me. I felt so free after that. So I just wanted to share and be very grateful for that opportunity.
And I will also say, Sharon, thank you to all these leaders that allowed you to do that, but thank you for being brave and sharing it. I think we have to really be brave right now. We have to fight for each other. We have to be allies. We have to be accomplices. We have to help each other. And so, which is why I wanted so much to do this show. So I was really glad that to get to learn about your work. So, all right, now we're going to dig into a little bit about who these individuals are and how we can support what they're doing. Because once again, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about supporting each other and making sure nobody's left out and nobody's not included. So Kavita, I'm going to start with you. I know you've started a new business. You're going to retire from one position, and I guess you don't understand what retirement means, but she's starting a business, or continuing a business. So why don't we start with that? In general, why are you involved as an advocate, and how is it tying to your consulting services, and why is it so important for us to support entrepreneurs with disabilities?
I wouldn't say I'm retired. I might say I'm just ending a term as the president in the organization, which was a perfect segue for me to develop my new business. I have to say that being a part of the California Association of the Deaf as president, the experience that I gleaned there, and working with being executive director for the Global Deaf Foundation, it gave me the visibility. It allowed me to observe some of the things that are missing in businesses that are in existence. There are two things. We see many, many deaf, disabled people who are applying for jobs, and they have great skills and talents, highly qualified, but oftentimes are not selected for the position. Number two, with HR departments, human resources, I'm focusing with that department because oftentimes they are not following due process. They are not hiring people with disabilities and are absolutely clueless on how it is to work with disabled people. You know, when you have a panel that interviews a deaf individual, they have no background knowledge about disabilities or deafness, and they're having interviews with a disabled individual or a deaf person. They don't know how to design it so that it works. It asks them questions that may talk about skills and qualifications. However, does it address their rights as a person? Secondly, many large companies and corporations including say universities and so forth, will say employment with more opportunities, we look to hire with diversity and so forth. You have these statements, they preach these things, but are they actually living up to them? Because at the end of the day, we're not seeing them hire people who are in inclusive diversity and whatnot. And why are they reluctant to provide accommodations? Are there interpreters in place? And I believe it's the panel. They are not being able to equip the needs and accommodations for the applicant. So I took HR training, and oftentimes they teach you certain things. However, when you're actually working in that field, you're not living up to what you're trained. And once I learned all of these steps, it led me to decide to open my new business and able to provide human resource training to those in those offices. That way they can be compliant. Do some consultation. What does a counseling service mean? Offering different tools and ideas, and not just about accommodations, but giving them trainings on what autism means and any other ism that we have in society. Training so that folks can treat their employees, treat potential customers, etc., and allow them to understand the best way to provide exemplary services, to show mutual respect. And then thirdly, since working, whether it's in business or education, we want to see equity. And there's a lot of inequity around, and that's where I'm at. I'm trying to bridge that gap. I set up my business that will be announced very soon in the fall, I'm expecting. And so it's still in the process. I'm taking care of the paperwork and everything. And so I'm very excited to have my new business and looking forward to getting it up and running. And if any of you out there watching has a need and could work with me, please reach out to me.
And Kavita, do you have a name for your business yet?
Well, yes, I've already, it's Better Life for Change.
Ooh.
It's already been registered.
Well, and I will also say that Kavita had shared an article with me from the New York Times, which is a fabulous article about, once again, name sign language. So I was watching, it's really beautiful. But I want to make a comment that we all need to get behind entrepreneurs with disabilities. So I know I'm committing to Kavita that I will mentor her, I will help her when she has her new website. I'll make sure that it goes back out here. And I know I've invited all of these amazing leaders to be part of Billion Strong. We're hoping that that we can even put an announcement out on Billion Strong of not only this New York Times article, but the video that y'all all did. So we want to turn the volume up. Everybody needs to watch that video. Everybody does. So welcome to being an entrepreneur. We wish you such great luck. And I want to say one more thing before I go to Raymond. I do a lot of work with the Enabling Conference. I really believe in it. And they wanted to have more panelists that were deaf. But they were struggling. How many sign language interpreters do we need? Oh, it's expensive. And so I said, well, why don't I reach out to other well-known disability conferences and see what they're doing? Oh, it was so sickening to me, because what they told me and I won't tell you who they are, but what they told me is it's too hard to include the deaf panelists, so we don't do it. And it made me sick, because these are disability conferences. So we're not going to include people that are deaf. Sharon, maybe I have to listen harder to her for her accent, but the wisdom coming out of her mouth. So that's not acceptable. That cannot be okay with us. So if you don't see panel members that are representing deaf and hard of hearing, you don't see sign language interpreters, I don't think that's the disability conference that you should support or go to. because that's ridiculous not to be including this part of the community in these conversations. And that is also happening in employment, which is why we do need Kavita and all these leaders, because we are not including people that are deaf in the workforce. We're not doing it because it's too hard. I don't know what your excuses are, but I know Kavita can help you and all these others can help. So anyway, I get all passionate about this because I hate when people are left out. But Raymond, let's go to you. I'm sort of going to combine two of your questions. What can companies do to be more inclusive to the community of people with disabilities? But what can the AAPI communities do to spread awareness of our culture and debunk the model minority myth that you brought up? I loved that question.
So I need to rewind a little bit back to why I did the video with Sewing and everyone here. When Sewing came to me, because we're both in the Asian American Pacific Islander Resources and Empowerment Employee Resource Group at Disability Rights California. She came to the group and said, "We're doing this video. Would anyone like to join?" I wanted to join because of everything I've seen in the news recently with the attacks on Asian American, and my parents are an older generation, and they are concerned. Nothing has happened to them, and nothing will. Fingers crossed. And I'm worried. I'm concerned for them. I'm worried for them. They don't want to go outside as often anymore. And my sister, who lives in the Bay Area, actually, her and her boyfriend actually, bought mace to protect themselves. And hearing all that, because of my concern for my family, I want to actually speak up. I don't know what else I can do, but I want to speak up and bring attention to everything that's been happening, and hope that this is not just going to fade away after all this attention. It doesn't fade away. And companies, as Kavita mentioned earlier, and Deborah, you as well, if you want to include the AAPI community, put them in, create employee resource group, give them a seat at the table, so they actually have a say in policy and whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in the company. Yes, give them a seat at the table. And also for us as Asian American in the community, we should go out to do any cultural competency training. So for example, going back to the employee resource group we have at Disability Rights California, the leadership is talking about doing cultural competency training to the entire agency, just to talk about, just to debunk some myths. When it comes to, for example, when it comes to Asian American, usually people generally think South Asian, so Chinese, Japanese, but they don't think about, because Asian American is such a broad, it includes so many different countries. We don't think about, India or all the other countries that you might not think might be included as being Asian. So debunk some myths, talk about the model minority myth, how I mentioned earlier, we Asian are seen as always being successful, good at math, which I'm not that great at, and being successful. But that, as Deborah said, that puts a lot of pressure on especially young people. When I was in high school and I see other Asian American with disabilities, I'll give you an example. There was a high schooler who is blind, and he was having so much trouble at school. And his parents were so adamant, even accepting that he might have a learning disability, that he doesn't want to seek help. He doesn't want to appear weak or not live up to his parents' expectations. I don't know what other word to use, but it's sad. It's disheartening. If he actually worked with his parents to seek services, he would have an easier time and may actually be successful, whatever that may mean to him and his family. So I don't know what else to say. I think that's about what I have right now.
But that was beautiful. That was really a beautiful point. So thank you. It is ridiculous how we put such pressure on each other. So I know we have 15 minutes left. I want to make sure everybody has time to talk. And so Sharon, are you raised? Did you want to make a quick comment? I mean, Kavita. Sorry,
Kavita, yeah.
And then next. Sorry.
Just really quick, just to respond to what Raymond was just saying. You know, oftentimes we have applicants that fill out, you know, what your nationality is, because it does ask that, you know, on the application form, and you mark off various pieces of information. However, when you see the word Asian as a choice, that's all it allows. It doesn't allow you to say specifically, you know, what kind of Asian you are. Secondly, when it comes to disability, you have to click, you know, do you have a disability? You click on that, and then it gives you a laundry list of items. But I think, you know, why doesn't it just be, well, I just disability? Well, I look to see deaf and hard of hearing, and it's not on the list. So then I click on a third area, and then finally, so if you know, say something like, well, not limited to X, Y, and Z. And so it's something to keep in mind. And I think oftentimes people have to disclose because of the law, but in actuality, they disclose all this information and then they don't get hired, even though they say, hey, I answered all of the questions, but when it comes right down to it, the number of people with disabilities who get hired is very, very small.
Right.
And so it's a complete injustice from the very beginning.
Well said, well said. I totally agree. And we've got a lot of work to do to include each other. We really do. Sharon, I know we've got about 12 minutes. But I am interested in one of the questions that you gave me, which is why do people with disabilities, I mean, Kavita was just talking about it, struggle so much to become employed in the workforce?
The past 10 years after my master's degree, I applied to so many jobs, and also say that I would volunteer to show that I can do it. And it's just that people are not open to hiring people with disabilities, just giving them an opportunity to see what they can do. And I also gave you a PowerPoint on accommodation, and maybe the employers are scared that it's gonna be too expensive, but the cost is only gonna be under $500 one time, if any. Because that for me, my accommodations would be, if I needed a phone, it might be just access to a speakerphone or a desk that I can use my chair around. I don't need that many accommodations. And maybe some places they see me coming in to ask them, can I volunteer to show my potential that I can serve the people? And they just, the way they look at you, they think that you can't handle it. And I've run into a couple directors. They were open to hire me, but a couple weeks later, they retired or they left the position, And then I try to work with the new directors. They're not open, so they're not gonna give you a chance. So, I mean, I wish there was another way to interview. They gotta change the interview process and how they and try to get more people with disabilities. My hope is for the ADA, the employment section, that they can require federal and state agency that runs direct disability service required to have like 50% staff with disabilities, so that we can show other people that we are capable.
Yeah, well said. And I will also say that as you know, that's one reason why we created Billion Strong, because we are going to highlight leaders like you. Sharon, I don't have a master's degree. I wish I had a master's degree. I never got one. So it's ridiculous. We wouldn't do this to any other segment of our population. An African American comes in and we're like, well, you just volunteer and we'll see. It's insulting what we do. So that's, you know, so there's a lot going on. But let's go to Sharon, Sharon G next. Why do you feel that why did you feel like you needed to create SCADA?
Well, you know, where I was born and raised, there weren't very many Asian deaf people. I felt very isolated, and I went through a lot of bullying, and I got picked on, and I wasn't sure if I was normal. And once I went to college and I met several other Asians, I was able to hear their stories, and they were also picked on and misunderstood, were, you know, labeled, mislabeled, had a lot of assumptions made against them. So I realized I wasn't alone. One day I had got a flyer about an Asian Deaf conference happening in San Francisco. And I thought, let me go check it out. And once I got there, there were 250 deaf Asians that came from all over the United States, and I was dumbfounded. I was like, what? Wow. And it changed my life right there at that event. I had met so many successful individuals. I met Asians who were teachers, and I said, you teach, really? I had never seen a deaf Asian teacher before wherever I grew up. I thought that position was only for non-Asians. And so that was not something I thought to major in as a student. But once I met some deaf teachers who were successful, I thought, well, this is definitely a possibility, which led me to, in fact, become a teacher. And having attended a conference, you know, gave me the role models, and it led me to set up SCADA back in 1999, because I wanted other Asian deaf folks to have a place to go, to participate, to have a sense of support and resources so that we can foster each other's identities and encourage leadership, give them a sense of pride and self-esteem. I wanted people to feel that joy that I went through having met others like me. And I've been involved for 22 years now, and I have seen the people who come and join, and they have that same dumbfounded sense of, I can't believe I met my people. And they don't have to stay within the organization, but they know that it's here. They have that opportunity and inspiration to know that they're not alone. So those of us who were involved in the involvement, we did in fact host that same conference in 2004. We We have workshops, we have just social gatherings, we have other businesses that maybe are owned by or run by deaf Asians come. We have successful Asian deaf to sit on a panel. And we feel like it was really important to offer these things because of how it impacted me. I wanted to share that with others, let them know that they are not alone, that they're welcome, that there's a place for them. And so that was the impetus, yes.
And that you have a community, which is so important. So,
Yes.
I said your name wrong, Min Chin. So based on your experience with SCADA, how do you feel it's really benefited the Asian deaf community? And also I would like to ask, and I know we're at the end of time, but we can go over a couple minutes, but what else can we do to support what you're doing?
Well, I would say definitely it's been a benefit. I definitely owe a lot of gratitude to Sharon. I have met so many deaf role models. There's Sharon and Kavita and a bunch of other people that it really inspired me. And having that representation and I'm very key on supporting the youth. I'm very involved with that. Say, for example, I've had conversations with one student who is a freshman, well, they were a couple years ago, Asian deaf, was very passive and had a best friend that was Mexican. And we noticed that there was a lot of culture clash between the two of them. And I really wanted to understand where they each were coming from. So we sat them together and I was very direct and I said, I understand where you're from. Your mother says, as our culture, you're not allowed to have a voice. You're not allowed to say how you feel. And that brought tears to their eyes. And I really sat and tried to understand and work with them and let them know that, we as adults have to be role models for our own Asian youth, because the parents are telling them one thing, you can't be who you are, you can't step up. But the generation now is very different than the one that we come from. The younger folks are really different now. And it's really nice for them to have this role model to see. And with SCADA being set up, it gave us a space to make huge impacts on the community. Even though in the generations that do change over time, the culture is still there. Their place still exists no matter what generation you come from, and that's powerful. It's beneficial to develop the leaders that we have for our future.
Wow, that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful and so hopeful. And I agree, the young people, they just think differently. Thank goodness. We need them. They clean up a whole bunch of messes my generation made. But so thank you so much to this amazing panel. Please, my audience, please support what they're doing. There are more Asians in the world than any other. It's ridiculous. There's like 1 billion, 0.5 people in India. There are 1 billion, 100 million in China alone. And then we start adding all of the rest of Asia. There's a lot of Asians, and there's a lot of benefit in beauty and diversity. So I hope that the audience will join me in supporting these amazing, talented people. You see some people that are looking for jobs. You see entrepreneurs here. We see organizations. Let's all join together and help them and make sure everybody else is taken care of. So thank you so much. And special thanks to our interpreters, to Solwing for figuring this out, and to Doug Frest, my producer in the background. Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to Human Potential at Work, brought to you by Rue Global Impact. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your audio. To learn more about Rue Global Impact and the services we provide, visit rueglobal.com. To learn more about how you can become a sponsor of Human Potential at Work, email David at rueglobal.com. That's David at rueglobal.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next time with a new episode.